Men of Reddit, what's something women don't realize is s.e.x.ual harassment? The same exact that applies to s.e.x.ual harassment against women. I had a girl I used to work with slap my ass, grab my crotch, and try to rub her breasts against me. When I took it to HR, nothing was done about it. A week later I got written up because she lied and told HR I had verbally abused her. An old coworker of mine, he was male, was Wally, harassed by one of our directors. He told me and was like, well, it's whatever. She's hot, but I wish she'd stop asking for, touching my hair, grabbing my butt. A few years down the line, my friend and I are both department directors in other facilities. The industry we were in was quite niche, and basically word gets around. Everybody knows everybody in the area. I sit down for a meeting with one of the hiring directors, and she says, "We are think of hiring harassing director for the open position, and I know you worked with her. What do you think?" I was honest and said, she was great at her job, very highly qualified. Families loved her, staff loved her for the most part, but she Wally harassed my coworker over the course of 2 years. And she didn't get hired. I was really glad I told the truth in that situation. Very nerve-wracking, but that was the actual reason she didn't get hired. She was in the final running and faffed herself. I hope trends continue. There should be no double standard when it comes to these things. Years ago, I had a female colleague who made me uncomfortable. I'm into makeup and jewelry, and she would compliment me a tad too much. It got to the point where I felt like she was monitoring how much bronzer I used one day, what necklace I wore another day, what color shoes I wore on that day. I would not want to wear my necklace, or those shoes, or whatever. I only learned later that this was a form of harassment. I noticed she started doing this to males who worked in other departments. She would go up to guys and touch them and go, "You working out?" I was promoted to supervisor. Not long after being promoted, I came into work one day to be told I would be witnessing her termination was for performance issues. Call me petty all you want, but I was happy to walk here out. I got flirted with when I was younger by a girl at work. We were talking with several coworkers, and I let it be known that I was a virgin, that I'd only ever received oral. Well, she liked me, and I liked her well enough, and we were verbally flirtatious. I was depositing money in the manager's office, and she followed me in and closed the door. Then, really without warning, she full-on grabbed my crotch and fondled for a 3 count before I slapped her out of reflex. Not hard enough to even leave a mark, but enough to get her to react. My brain just wasn't prepared for her to do that. I've been with strong initiators since, and never had an issue. Something about that specific situation, and my brain went nope. She didn't talk to me again, and I never said anything to anyone. As far as I know, she didn't either. This was Domino's in Gainesville, FL, in the early 2000s. Mostly, I wonder now if she even has the memory of it, and if so, how she remembers it. I've seen that too, where the guy sitting in the cubicle in front of me kept saying stop over and over to this girl who would sit on his lap and do God knows what to him. We goofed off in the office a lot, had fun, but this girl was weird. It's like she enjoyed making him uncomfortable. Did it almost daily. I must have heard stop 100 times. She'd be in his tiny cubicle doing something and laughing. He was the nicest guy too. Nasty women are predators to nice, decent men. It's disgusting. This particular lady had kids and would hit the bar on weekends. I remember thinking, I hope he doesn't let her screw him, and she ends up pregnant with another kid, and he's stuck with her. Almost the exact same happened to me when I worked at a gas station in my 20s. This girl was always standing next to me and would talk about her tits and touch me and run against me when I was working the register, and I mentioned something to a coworker about how she's always in my bubble, and that person took it to management and they call her and I both into the office, and I was like, oh no. I wasn't trying to make an official facking anything, I was just venting, and she, of course, was pissed and filed a s.e.x.ual harassment complaint for me spreading rumors and gossip. That fires me up still like 10 years later. What happened to be a quality control manager would she? Our previous QC manager was a well-endowed woman who went out of her way to bump people in the head with her breasts when walking behind them in the conference rooms. She also slapped guys on the pretty much every day. I doubt most minded as she was good looking. More than once she put herself in a position where she ground her butt against my junk. 3 of us went to HR over this, and nothing was ever done. Let's just say she made some rather explicit offers for assistance with the ISO documentation updates that I eventually caved to. Not exactly proud of it, but I was a single guy who hadn't got laid in a while. She ended up getting fired not too long after the ISO audit. I don't know what the actual reason was, but once it was done, they put these narrow vertical slit view windows in all of our office doors and removed the locks from the conference room doors. My brother's ex-boss's wife was trying to sleep with him. Fearing for losing his job, he declined. She told her hubby my brother was hitting on her, and he lost his job regardless. A similar situation happened to me with what used to be a close friend of mine. His girlfriend pulled her shirt off and jumped on me. Not going to lie, I liked it, but I ended up telling her to stop because I had a girlfriend at the time and she was my friend's girl. She couldn't handle the rejection and told my boy I tried to sleep with her. End of friendship. Caused issues in the relationship which ended as well. I've been into weightlifting most of my adult life. As a result, my arms and chest are noticeable. I'm not like a bodybuilder or anything, but I've got big arms and a protruding chest. Women think that they can just grab on my arms and rub my chest without permission or warning. I think that they think it's okay, because they compliment me afterwards. It makes me uncomfortable. My fiance never really took me serious about it until at a work party one of my female coworkers basically groped my arms in front of her and it made her jealous. She gets it now. This is a lot more common than I thought, because when I was younger, guys used to be emphatic about wanting to be touched or objectified, so I didn't see it as a problem. If someone was uncomfortable, I'd still apologize because I feel like consent works both ways. My husband goes to the gym regularly and he doesn't get touched, but in a while he'll work in front of a mirror and some girl will intentionally walk in front of him with her basically in his face. He'd move. Then the same girl will walk over to where he is and basically do the same thing. I don't like that because he's very uncomfortable with it, but God forbid he says something about it, he'd be put on blast for harassment. I cringed on your behalf reading this. I'm sorry people feel entitled to touch you. That's really gross behavior regardless of either person's gender. Just because some is easy on the eyes doesn't mean I have any right to touch them in any way without their enthusiastic consent unless, of course, I'm performing spar in them or pulling them from in front of a train or something. Yikes. I don't understand some women as a woman myself. We get angry if someone is to touch us without our consent, but some of us think it's okay to just to touching and rubbing on men without their consent? Gross. Had this happened to me at a bar with my girl. Chick was leaving with her dude and latches onto my arm as she's walking by, then plays it off like she was steadying herself afterwards. I was caught off guard and not used to the attention that I froze and didn't even know what to say. Luckily, my girl laughed about it afterwards. Did she just feel up your arm? It was certainly a first for me. A part of me was like, wow, it feels good to be noticed. The other part of me felt uncomfortable. She wasn't ugly by any means either. Couldn't imagine what her dude thought, cause if that was me I would have left her at the bar. Some women once tried to take off some of my clothes in a club, without me showing interest in them at all. When I told them to f off after a while, they got angry at me. Never been so confused. I was told in college I had to take off my shirt in front of 20 people, because they were gonna show us how some medical equipment worked. I had to say no 7 times before they let me off the hook. I was always kinda ripped, but gained some weight in college and was insecure about it. Really didn't want to take my shirt off in front of everyone. Was accused by the teacher of ruining the class for everyone. Awful experience for me. Teachers and 18/20ths in class were girls. Forgot to say. Randomly grabbing your dick at parties. Feeling up a passed out man. Telling you to take your shirt off, especially when it's the first time they've met you. Girl at work s.e.x.ual my dick when I was passed out drunk at a work-related Christmas party. Woke up with my pants down and junk out. Coworkers saw what happened and didn't stop her. I felt so guilty, and my wife, now ex for other reasons, didn't know, and I felt I couldn't tell her about it. Somehow I was blaming myself for it even though I know it's not my fault. That hit me right in the face, and a childhood trauma reappeared. 13 years since it happened, but I do still think about it from time to time. Just walking up to dudes and grabbing are pretty obvious example. A handful of times in my life, I've had a few random girls in public places just walk up behind me, and not only just slap or touch me but legit grab it as hard as possible as if they were trying to hold onto the side of the cliff. Like it would have enough pressure to be painful to make me pull away out of instinct. Especially if they had nails, and I was wearing something soft like gym shorts or sweatpants, which happened once, and my had legit red marks afterwards. Every fucking time the girl and her friends she was with just smiled and giggled away as if it was hilarious. Some would just walk away as they giggled. Some would stand there smiling at me waiting for my reaction, presumably thinking I'm gonna ask for her number or something. Every fucking time I give them a disgusted look and just walk away. Sometimes I'll insult them and say something like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Or, "Go get some help," or, "You belong on the offender registry." If it was around other people I'd say it loud as fuck and make a scene so people would look. It happened once near the checkout lines of a very busy grocery store. I basically yelled at this girl, "What the fuck makes you think you can just grab my like that?" The store literally went silent, and at least 50 people turned and stared at us. The way she and her friends squirmed in embarrassment was beautiful. But of course, not a single bystander said anything to stand up for me or shame the girls. Wonder if the same thing would happen if the genders were reversed. Their reactions to that are hilarious though. Nothing but pearl clutching and confused Pikachu faces. The giggling and smiles vanish instantly, and all of a sudden they're confused by my reaction, and then it somehow quickly turns into me being a weirdo or an hole because of my response. Apparently, since I'm a man, I should enjoy it and be grateful when pretty girls pay me that attention. I had a giggling background girl actually say that to me once. If I went up to a girl and grabbed her hard enough to leave marks, and just stood there giggling with my friends, I would be in jail. Hell, my friends might even be coming with me. But if you have a vagina, it's all good. I'm 6'3", in pretty good shape my whole life, and I like to think I am relatively attractive. Not to brag or sound conceited or anything, but it factors into the stories. Worked as a bouncer for a beach bar, groped more times than I could count. One patron was literally known by all the staff for groping the younger male bouncers and faced zero consequences. The cops we had that did parking lot security laughed it off whenever she did it. Also in college, woke up from a drunken stupor to find a girl who lived on my floor, who I knew liked me, had broken into my dorm room, took my pants off, and was in the process of insertion without a condom. I told her no, and she said boys couldn't say no and threatened me. All my friends told me I should have enjoyed it, and all the girls said I was either gay or would have made her feel bad by refusing, and I shouldn't make girls feel bad about their bodies. Most people said, "You're so much bigger than her, how could she force you to do anything?" Lots of my guy friends also said stuff to the effect of, "You're lucky you're attractive, and girls want you man," and made it seem like I was the rude one for complaining. She also gave me chlamydia that day, which was super fun. Later that year, my girlfriend, unrelated to the first girl, came home late and wanted to hook up. I was asleep and had a rough day with a lot of emotional stressors with school, work, and my parents fighting and getting divorced. I told her no, and I wasn't in the mood, and she told me boys couldn't refuse from their girlfriends. I said no again, and she looked me dead in the eye, became completely serious, and said, "You are fucking me tonight, you don't have a fucking choice," and then threatened to tell people I sawed her if I didn't. I was about a foot taller than her, so nobody would ever believe me that I was forced into anything, but I was in the process of applying to medical school, and an accusation would literally ruin my life. I saw another girl handcuff my friend, who was very drunk, to a radiator in a secluded room at a party, and then give him oral. She brought real handcuffs without a quick release mechanism, so he actually couldn't escape if he wanted to. Afterwards, he told me he didn't want it, but really couldn't do anything about it. He thought they were fake cuffs when she put them on. It was a Halloween party. Her friends made jokes about it for weeks, how we should be careful around this girl or she might get one of us too. People wonder why sometimes I jump when girls I don't know touch me now. Thankfully, the story has a happy end. I got into med school. I'm completing a residency in my hometown, and I found an awesome wife, and we are very in tune with each other, and I love her dearly. Still, I wish I knew back in college that those things weren't okay, and I shouldn't accept them as normal. Had a weird interaction at my last job. I was the only male manager in the company and one of the youngest, and during a weekly call with the other 18 managers, one of the women noticed I'd shaved, since I had my camera on, and pointed it out, to which I suddenly had a gaggle of women talking about how young and handsome it made me look. I legit had a 55-years-old woman tell me I was exactly the type of guy she would have been all over when she was my age, but maybe she can settle for me meeting her daughter. I'm married, they all know this. Then I had another woman tell me she would have to update her drawing now, and proceeded to hold up a pencil drawing of my head with a heart around it. Needless to say, I never turned my camera on again, but still got the odd, must be shy, or, we embarrassed him, followed by laughter. A lot of women are either oblivious or brazen in their harassment. One coworker invited me to fly to Las Vegas to attend a wedding with her. When I said my wife would likely have a problem with that, she said we could just tell her it was for work. Then comes the kicker, she said, I am on birth control, so whoever comes with me can come in me all they want. She was actually pretty pissed that I laughed in her face. A second coworker had lost a lot of weight from her second child. She was feeling good about herself, and I congratulated her, probably saying something like, "Yeah, you look great." She took this as a cue and, for the rest of the day, brought up how she needed a victory lap, namely cheating on her husband with me in a hotel room. Again, she was absolutely livid at being turned down. Women think they can do whatever they want when they are alone with a guy. It's part funny, part sad. I am male, don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I am a good-looking guy and very much in shape. I was wally harassed on a good few occasions during my training to become a mental health nurse. Had my grabbed numerous times. Our university were tunics that had popper buttons. Had staff rip that open so my body was showing. When I was bending over or attending to patients being whistled at, and the cherry on the cake on a night out, a fellow female student, lady about 45, I would have been 19-ish at the time, grabbed my dick and balls. When I qualified, it all stopped. But imagine this happened to a female. I never reported anything, but was scared it would have some negative impact on my career progression. Student nurses are very good at being shy and quiet, and almost feel like being intimidated when on placements. Just sitting on your lap without asking. Although this is just a symptom of a bigger problem at least I am regularly faced with. The assumption that men are always horny and always want. Sadly, an assumption people of all genders seem to make. For people thinking this way, invading your personal space, touching, making comments, etc., is not harassment, as they just assume you want that to happen. Now, if you make your boundaries clear and say no to them, you somehow are the bad guy again. Now, of course, this problem is not limited to women, but to me seems to be a general problem in interpersonal relationships. My partner went to a job interview, and the older woman kept touching him as they talked, like on his arm or hand. I told him that's not okay, and he doesn't have to take that. He said that he didn't want to make a scene because she might accuse him of harassment in retaliation, and she had his information. And I realized men put up with harassment out of fear too. Different reasons, but it's for both genders. I'm a woman, and this subreddit is eye-opening. Honestly, never realized men went through this much harassment, especially in work settings. This needs to be talked about more often. These women 100% believe their behavior is acceptable, but if the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be calling HR immediately. I guess a lot of women don't realize this happens because this behavior is not in their wheelhouse. Do corporations even have mandatory s.e.x.ual harassment training anymore? I've seen hundreds of videos over the years, and nearly all focused on men harassing women. Story time. This actually just happened to a buddy of mine a few days ago. So my buddy, we'll call him Jack. This girl, we'll call her Samantha, and I were going to visit our friend that lives 5 hours away. So we are all hanging out and having a good time, going to some bars. and just hanging out about halfway through the weekend, though it was clear that Samantha was really trying to get in Jack's pants. To the point he would say no, and she would just keep trying. And on the last night, she went as far as waking up from his sleep twice to try and have with him after he said no. He was kinda pissed off because if the roles were switched, he would be in a lot of trouble. I think some girls just don't get that no means no. She was just being too forward for the other person to not be putting anything back in. I was working at a birthday party in a bar once, and a really drunk 40-year-old woman decided to just walk behind the counter and slip a banknote into my shirt. She then started to rub around my chest like some sort of massage, I guess. It was really weird. I just stood there confused, waiting for it to end. Her husband was watching the whole time and didn't seem too happy about the whole thing. But nobody really seemed to care or just laughed about it. If I, as a 40-year-old man, had done that to a 17-year-old girl working at a bar, I would have gotten one hell of a lawsuit. I had a drunk young lady rip my button-up shirt off in a bar on a dance floor, then proceed to cut my dick and balls. I was pissed, so told her and her friends to fuck off. After I got my shirt back from them, which had all the buttons torn off except the bottom two. That was super annoying, but I was just going to deal with it until I was asked to leave by the bouncers for yelling at women and not buttoning up my shirt. Another group of women approached me and said they had the whole thing on video, which I then sent to the bar's management and got a $200 gift certificate for it. In hindsight, I probably should have just taken it to the police. I never felt in danger or scared for my safety, but it was totally inappropriate, and if I did that, I would be in jail. Whenever you touch us intimately, inappropriately, arms, chest, face, if you wouldn't do that at work, don't do it to us, especially without our permission. Jesus favk, and attacking our faces with yours. If you don't have my express permission, don't fucking touch me. I don't necessarily mean verbal consent. Sorry, I realize this might be a bit more aggressive than is necessary. Again, I'm sorry. It's late, and I can't sleep because I'm having waking nightmares about this exact stuff. Work security at a wedding reception. Drunk women feeling empowered and s.e.x.ual, and completely secure in their untouchability when abusing staff. Not all women are so vile, but security deals with every one of them who decides to violate someone. We get to deal with complaints from the catering and service staff, and we get harassed ourselves. I've been groped, pawed, and propositioned, both covertly and overtly. My favorite was this drunk 40-something lady who could barely stand up, trying to get to the entrance while being supported by the guy she was with. No idea what their actual relationship was. She openly ogled me, then suggested that I follow them back to the hotel across the street for a threesome. The guy supporting her, also drunk, but not nearly as bad, was apologizing and looking worried the whole time. Not sure what he was actually worried about. The proposition, the idea of a threesome with another guy, the blatant and overt harassment of venue staff, the fact that it was security being harassed, or that his companion seemed intent on faceplanting on every other step, because she was still wearing 4-inch heels. I felt for him, if only because he was probably about to get puked on as soon as they got into their Uber. It's part of the job, and I don't miss working weddings.